Giant Goofballs, a New York Giants podcast. Are you a goofball that loves Giants football? If so, sit back and relax as we talk about the team that both excites and frustrates us so much. And now, here are your goofball hosts, Drew and Rob.
Welcome, fellow goofballs, to Two Giant Goofballs, a New York Giants podcast. I am Drew, joined as always by...
I'm me, Rob. Let's talk about some of them D-line. Ooh.
Well, Edge, not D-line. That was last episode.
I'm sorry, I got so excited.
So, you just can't hide it. You're about to lose control, and I think I like it.
Ooh,
So, part of a little bit late start here today. I had a little computer trouble. Still having a little bit of computer trouble. We're trying to give it a go here. Going to try to eliminate graphics, videos, that kind of stuff. That's kind of going to slow this down a little bit here, so we can get through this and then get this thing fixed. Because this is twice in a week. I gotta get this thing fixed. This is ridiculous. So it is time for a new computer, I think. But we're going to go over a new edge player here to start off here as we cross over into this edge room here, because this is an exciting group here for this season, guys. Like this is going to be a big change up, I think, this season. And we're going to say this might be a decent group here. A little Batman and Robin action going on here. So let's start with the guy that we think is probably going to be the Batman of the room here, and that's Brian Burns, the off-season trade acquisition here. Brian Burns still just 26 years old, 6'5", 250 pounds, 16th overall pick, originally out of Florida State. Last year, a little bit of a down year for him there. 16 games and all starts, 50 tackles, 8 sacks, 16 tackles for loss, 18 QB hits, 2 passes deflected, a forced fumble recovery, and a 73.8 PFF grade. 2-time Pro Bowler. So get a little recognition around the league there. Thought of very highly. Remember a couple of years ago, the Rams offered multiple first-round picks to get this guy, and the Panthers were like, no. Somehow we got him for cheaper. I don't know how that works. I'm a little confused, but
I was about to say they gave the house away.
Didn't want him that badly right now at this point. It's a little odd, but he's that guy that if you look at his stats, the production hasn't been bad. But there's a lot of hype around him that's stronger than what the hype is at that, what the production is at that point there. People act like he's a top tier pass rusher, a guy that's like an unstoppable force. And he's not been that. Now, I'll say this. Originally, when we looked at his year last year, we're like, oh, that's a down year. It's a bad year for the Panthers. Is it him not playing hard? Is it a bad year? Talking to a lot of guys who follow the Panthers, the big thing I'm getting back is it's not that that he kind of took plays off. It's not that he kind of slowed down, not get hurt in a contract, potential year. The issue is more that they kept putting him into pass coverage, which just makes absolutely no sense when the guy who's supposed to be a top play pass rusher, right? I mean, why would you do that?
Yeah.
So he comes. He comes in now.
Do the opposite of against the quarterback.
Yeah. So he comes in now to the Giants, and we're gonna have a big change this year. We talked about obviously a lot the last couple of years about Wink Martindale's defense and his scheme, because it's a different scheme than what you typically get. Kayvon Thibodeaux last year passed the all-time, I think, Wink Martindale sack record in a Wink Martindale defense. That's not a heavy edge sack kind of defense. We talked about that initially when we got him. We kind of try to temper some people's expectations of what to expect out of the edge room, because the edge room is a jack of all trades in a Wink Martindale defense. Now, if you listen to everything coming out with Shane Bowen now, this is going to be a pin your ears back and go get the goddamn quarterback kind of defense.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a difference.
And there's a lot of talent that's going to be around him to help get him to be to that person. To be the fat man. You said Batman, but let's be real. Batman is not this big.
Well, the fat man is Dexter Lawrence.
Touche.
Sexy Dexy's got that role covered. But he has that potential to do that. And I think I'm not going to go crazy and say he's going to do 15 sacks or anything crazy like that. I think that's a little ridiculous to say. But I do think that this is a guy who's probably going to get more along the lines of like a 12, 13 sack kind of season if he remains healthy and if he is truly put back into pin his ears back and go after the goddamn quarterback kind of defense. I don't know if that's what it's going to be or not. They say that. But until I see anything, I never trust reports in the offseason.
100%, especially from our upper management. They like to tell fabrications of what is going to happen, especially during the draft time.
Poker face.
Yeah.
But now Brian Burns got this big contract now. It's a $30 million a year kind of average year. Again, with incentives. We talked about that. He's got incentives. He got a hit to do that. But irregardless, if you take out the freaking incentives, this is a big damn contract. And he's got some work to live up to it. Because I'm telling you right now, if he does 8-9 sacks a season like he's done a lot of the years in Carolina, and I know sacks aren't the only thing. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying this as a example as far as how he gets to the quarterback there. He's got to make big plays. He's got to be that guy who's a star of the defense because you're getting paid like it.
Correct. And you know what? We've talked about this another edge that we'll probably be talking about it very soon. But if he doesn't consistently get like the tackles, he needs to be getting a lot of pressures, which allows other people on the defensive line or this other edge that we're going to be talking about to be getting more sacks. Like they need to be working as a solid unit together. And if he gets 10 sacks, this year coming up, it's a win for us, especially like how this defense is played. And like we know that Thibodeaux is going to get sacks. We know that the sexy Dex is going to be getting snaps, like sacks. So like we know it's going to happen. So if you get three guys that have 10 plus sacks on the year
and snacks, okay.
Oh, yeah, I was about to say the snacks, little Dunkaroos.
Ooh, Dunkaroos were good back in the day. But
back in the day, that's diabetes 2.0.
I look at it like, again, if he hits like that 12 sack number, that's like, okay, you've reached that echelon now. Because if you look at pass rushers, I know people love talking about, I want 14 sacks, I want 15 sacks, crazy, higher numbers there. If you can get a guy who consistently averages 12 sacks a season, that's a win. That's a win right there. That's not something you get everywhere in the league at that point. So the question is basically, is that his ceiling, do we think? I mean, where do we think he's going to beat? I feel like people treat him, again, like a top-tier talent. And I'm not sure he's a top 5 pass rusher kind of guy. I think he has the potential to be a top 10 pass rusher, but not a top 5, if that makes sense. So,
I'm not like against what you're saying, but like this is optimistic Rob coming out. Like I'm not against what you're saying, but like there's also a lot of talent around him, which will help escalate his game. At the same time, it will also take away from some of the sacks and give him half sacks. So it has its pros and its cons, but it's an upgrade for him. It's an upgrade for us from where he was coming from, where what we have on our line. Like it's a win-win for both parties in this group. And if he starts averaging 12 sacks, like I don't think that's out of possibilities of what he could do. And like I don't think it's out of possibility like this guy could reach that top 5. Top 10 is more realistic, but like he has potential.
Oh yeah, and
or the height, one or the other.
The team around him is a huge difference. I mean, he had no help in Carolina whatsoever. This guy's getting double, triple teamed at that point when he's running to the quarterback because there's no one else to go after. Was Gross Matos going to be the one to go ahead and get the quarterback? I mean, they don't have a guy besides him. Exactly. That's the guy who played the other side of the football with. I'm on the side of the field with them. But
well, I know what you're talking about.
That's what they had. Oh, I know. I'm saying that's what they got. Like at some point you go, okay, wrong defense. They're having him go into pass coverage a lot. We're going to supposedly let him pin his ears back and go get the damn QB. Had no help around him. Going to have Dexter Lawrence and the guy we're talking about in a minute here, Kayvon Thibodeaux, with him.
Oh, spoiler.
I know. But I mean,
God.
that to me, you look at those things alone and go, okay, well, this is what he's shown when he's been put in pass coverage more than he probably should be, and he's had no help. I'm curious to see what the ceiling is because, like I said, people who I know that I have respect for their football IQ that think extremely high of this guy, extremely high of him. And I'm curious, do they see something I don't see? Because again, I'm high in him. Don't get me wrong. I'm not down on Brian Burns. I'm not down on the trade. I like the trade. The contract scares the bejesus out of me, to put it nicely. Because that's a ton of money for a guy who's never been a top tier talent yet. You're paying him top tier talent though. Like this is like this is like what you give Watt as a contract extension. That's what you're giving him. And what you're paying for is you're paying for what you hope is going to happen once you put him in the right system, where you put some help around him, and he enters his prime now. Because he's 26 years old, guys. That's still young. People forget he's been in the league like 4 years now. He's a younger player, so he's 26 years old. He's got another 5-6 years probably in that prime period that's going to be happening now.
So in a rebuttal, when you said what you paid Watt, I mean that's what you paid Watt when Watt was playing in NFL. But this is different.
No, I'm talking TJ Watt. I'm not talking.
Okay, all right.
Wrong Watt.
Yeah, so many Watts.
So many Watts. There really is 3 of them. Sheesh. But yeah, I mean that's what I'm looking at. Is I'm like, okay, we got a guy who just hasn't hit that high potential, but we're going to pay him now as if he is. So he's got to live up to that now. And I'll tell you who's going to be in real trouble at this point if he doesn't is going to be Joe Shane, because I can imagine John Mara is going to be very happy. He will not be getting any free medium cokes if Brian Burns doesn't develop into a spectacular player. That's for damn sure. I mean, he's just got to. There's no doubt about it. When you give him that contract, he's got to be dominant. Like, not good, not very good. He's got to be dominant. To pay that kind of money
means,
yeah.
Yep. That kind of money.
He is the second highest player. He's the second highest paid player on this team now to Daniel Jones. That's not good. Both the Daniel Jones or the him part.
I was going to say that depends on depends how you're looking at this.
I mean, I would have paid him in the 20s. I just think to even say 30, even to sniff 30 is ridiculous. Like, that's just insane. Absolutely insane. Maybe I'm old school. We used to pay people what $2-3 million to be top edge rushers in the league. So it's just like, I remember playing Madden as a kid going, this guy's making $4 million. I can't keep him on this payroll.
Well, also the payroll is like $27, but whatever.
I know. It was just weird. But yeah, like I said, we'll have to see. How does the change of scenery help him? How does the people around him help him? How does him? Because he's going to feel the pressure in that contract. Is that going to help him? I should say. How is it going to help? Is it going to help him? We haven't seen him try to, live those kind of pressures to that point before. It's going to be an interesting season. It really is. And, I got high hopes for him as a player. I just don't know if they're high enough.
You got
high hopes.
High hopes. You got high hopes.
I'm just saying, I don't know. I don't know if for me to pay $30 million to a player, he's got to be not a Pro Bowler, but an All Pro.
So if he goes All Pro, it becomes like top 3. Are you gonna say, do we get a steal?
Yeah. If he does, I would say steal. I shouldn't take the back. I won't say steal, but we got an appropriately priced.
Well, maybe that's what
he's getting paid like as Myles Garrett. He's getting paid like as Myles Garrett. He's not Myles Garrett.
Myles Garrett would probably not have been Myles Garrett with the Carolina Panthers.
Well, we'll see. And that's why we're going to have to see. That's where the is this right or not kind of thing goes through. So We'll have to take a look. So let's
Who is
take
better?
a look here.
Is it Burns or is it who is better? Is it Burns or is it his agent?
Oh, his agent's doing very good right now. I'll tell you that with that cut.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Robin now. I think it's safe to say he's Robin in this whole Batman Robin thing, and that's Kayvon Thibodeaux. Who, can you believe he's still 23 years old? I mean, the guy's played already 2 seasons, and he's 2 years younger than half the guys that got drafted this past year. So 23 years old, 6'5", 258 pounds, 5th overall pick back in 22 from Oregon. Last year, 17 games, 17 starts, 50 tackles, 11.5 sacks, 12 tackles for loss, 16 QB hits, 4 passes deflected, 3 forced fumbles, and 1 fumble recovery. And what's crazy is you look at his numbers. So this, let's compare him and Burns for a second, because it's now we have somebody else in the team that you're gonna compare this guy all day long to Brian Burns when the season starts. Let's be very frank in that. It's gonna happen because it's gonna be the conversation like we talked about a minute ago. He's probably the Robin. They're gonna have that conversation of who's Batman, who's Robin in this, and these guys will probably get these guys go driving a little bit there. So you look at they both had 50 tackles. Kayvon had 11.5 sacks. Brian Burns had 8. 12 tackles for loss compared to 16. 16 QB hits compared to 18. They have very similar numbers there. The big difference, we didn't really talk about it much of Brian Burns because the big talk is the contract and can he live up to the hype really with that, is Kayvon Thibodeaux. And I'm going to get a little slack from this, I have a feeling. But I'm going to say it anyway. He doesn't set a good edge. He does not set a good edge. So we talked about the PFF on Burns, 73.8. Thibodeaux's got a 58.4. The big difference with him is, especially against mobile quarterbacks, you see them getting outside of him because he falls for it where he goes past the quarterback instead of keeping in his lane, keeping in his spot just enough to stop people from getting to the outside. He's got to learn to get better at that. And I'm really hoping that having Brian Burns with them, helps him to improve some of this stuff. Because Burns does a good job at that. Burns is an overall good player.
Yeah.
He's not just a pass rush guy.
Well, the thing too is,
let's be very frank, was a pass rush guy.
Yeah, 100%. He was a pass rush guy. But let's go back to Batman and Robin. Robin became Nightwing because he was with Batman and he learned how to be, his own superhero. If you will. Yeah. Whatever they do. Anyway, but you got a guy like Burns around. Yeah, I was about that. But you got a guy around like
Holy
Burns,
Snow
right?
Angels, Indianapolis, Batman.
Holy snacks in Indianapolis.
But
anyway,
wow.
You got a guy around like Burns who's really good at setting the edge, being an edge player. And you got a guy like Thibodeaux that's really good at getting sacks. And all it takes is hey kid, you're doing this really good. Maybe think about this when you line up. I think it changed Thibodeau's game. Just a little conversation.
Well,
because
here's the other.
We all see with Thibodeaux.
He gets that. You said he's a really good sack guy. He's really good.
I was just saying really good sack, but similar
pass rusher. Is he a good pass rusher?
They have similar sack.
That question's got to be asked. Is he really a good pass rusher? Because
for a sophomore,
look at him going. Yeah. But no, but I'm saying because this is part of the conversation with Kayvon right now. He had a good season last year as far as sacks, but he also beat up on some really crappy teams.
Which you're supposed to do.
I feel like half his sacks I felt like were against the Commanders. It really felt like that. If you look at what he did in the season, he had 3 sacks against the Jets. Horrible defense. He played Washington. He had 3.5 sacks. When he played Seattle, their offensive line was decimated. He had 2 sacks that game.
Well, that's not fair because that decimated offensive line was still a top 10 line in the NFL with their secondary.
Not that time it wasn't. They had a lot of guys out. When we played them. That's 7.5 sacks though in those 4 games.
No, but you missed my point. Is the fact that their backup was way better than most offensive lines in the NFL.
I don't know if I go that far. I mean, they're better than our offensive line was, but that's not saying much. A Pee Wee football
that's what
team
I say.
is.
What was our offensive line rank last year? 30. So yeah.
But I'm saying you could take out that even and say it's 5.5 sacks in 3 games against really bad offensive line. But I'm just saying, like, he seemed to have games that he turned it on like that against what I would call weaker competition, and then
that's
kind of fall off the face of the earth of the games. Again, he had 7.5 sacks.
But that's based off of sacks. But that's not also talking about the pressures. But it's also not talking about the pressures where he's getting there. So, like, I hear what you're saying. Like, yes, sacks don't mean everything, but it's also a flashy
but I'm saying everybody's impressed because of the 11.5 sacks. But I'm saying 11.5 sacks is what's impressed everybody about him last year. And when you look at that and go 7.5 of them in 4 games, that means the other 13 games doesn't take a genius to figure out the math of that. He did 4 sacks. 4 sacks in 13 games.
Okay.
You see him with, against the Eagles, no sacks whatsoever. You see him against the Cowboys, let's say, for example. No sacks whatsoever. You see him against the Packers, which we won, but was kind of a rough game, half a sack. So there's 5 games right there, half a sack. Granted, against better talent, but
I was about to say it's also
Kayvon is the guy who wants the spotlight. If you want the spotlight, you got to earn that spotlight. You can't just beat the crap out of crappy teams and go, look what I did. And I'm not saying he did that per se.
I was going to say he definitely did not do that.
I don't want to.
The New York
clarify.
market did that.
No, but I'm not saying the New York market did. The New York market was pretty quick to point out, as far as at least the media wise, was quick to point out what I'm saying right now. But what I feel like is some fans, because again, we haven't had a lot of good things to cheer about. Hasn't been a lot of rah shish gamboo here. Okay, like I feel like the fans look for things to cheer on so much. Like that's why we still cheer for OBJ, because he hasn't played for us in almost a decade. No, I'm exaggerating, obviously, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, and Tommy DeVito.
We still reminisce.
Hey.
Remember he made that catch? Like that. Like we're just looking for something to cheer about. But like I said, we got to keep it realistic. Kayvon Thibodeaux is a pass rusher who's very young, has a lot of potential, hasn't necessarily had a lot of help. So I'm not putting it all on him. He hasn't had a lot of help. It's not like he's had people around him like he's going to have this year with Brian Burns. But he's a guy that also hot and cold in games, tends to beat up so far on weaker opponents, and has trouble setting the edge and has issues in the run game.
Yes, he definitely has issues in the run games, but like when it comes to pass protection, like he's put a lot of pressure on quarterbacks that we've talked about a lot in the past 2 years. That he's been in a lot of plays where he doesn't get credit for because he's been putting the pressure on. So, I mean, damn, you always give me a queen.
I know. It's also
I'm just saying, like, you're not wrong.
I know I'm not wrong. That's why I said it. R.I.P. to David Bowie there.
Yeah.
I guess Freddie Mercury too. They both died.
Yeah.
But
I'm just saying, you get a guy like the Batman and Robin here. They're just going to help each other out, improve the game. Like, yes, Thibodeau's young. He's raw. He needs to make a lot of improvements, but he's also shown a lot
Oh, and he has, and that's what I get it's a very interesting topic to talk about Kayvon overall, because I feel like he's done some things that aren't so great. There's people that harp on that. He's also done some stuff that's pretty good. I mean, he's still got the 11.5 sacks. He still has numbers comparable to Brian Burns that everybody's been kissing the butt of and saying he's the greatest thing since sliced bread, pass rushing wise, at least. Again,
and let's be real too. Like Brian Burns plays against Atlanta twice a year. He played against the Saints twice a year, and he played against the Buccaneers twice a year. Not saying it's the highest caliber talent.
Are you saying the NFC South is not a good talent pool?
I'm just saying maybe they're not the top tier.
Wow.
Just saying.
Wow. No, you're not wrong, but it's not the matter of how good the teams are I'm talking about. It's how good the lines are. So if you look at the lines for the Bucks this year weren't necessarily the best offensive line, but the prior years they were a good offensive line group. The Falcons are a good offensive line. The Saints, we played them last year. We see that's not a bad offensive line there. They need a little help now. That's why they had to kind of work on that this offseason. But they've had a decent offensive line that's kind of come together. So, again, it's not that kind of...
I wouldn't put them in the same caliber, all three of the teams. I would not put them in the same caliber of offensive lines as the Eagles or the Cowboys.
No, not offensive line wise, at least, especially for the Eagles. But they're not bad offensive lines. What I'm saying, it's not.
I'm not saying I wasn't.
No,
I wasn't saying that. I'm just saying, like, Thibodeaux 4 games a year that he played against some of the top tier offensive lines, and then the top tier that Birds had to play against was maybe top 14.
Well, I mean, he still played good. I mean, he still played, again, Atlanta twice a year, which is pretty good. New Orleans twice a year, which is pretty good. They played Minnesota, which got a stud left tackle, obviously, this past year. They played Houston last year. Again, another stud left tackle to go against for him there. I mean, he definitely played against quality teams here, as far as offensive line and tackle specifically to try to take care of him there. So he had 2 sacks against Atlanta. He had none against Minnesota. He had 1 against Houston. He actually played Dallas this year too. Didn't have anything against them. But again, like I said, I'm just looking at it as he also didn't have 5 sacks against 2 or 3 crappy teams and then a couple the rest of the year.
I'm just trying to point out both sides.
Part of the equation with Kayvon. It's got to be talked about.
Yeah. You're not wrong.
No, and I'm with you on that. I want us to talk about both sides because, again, you still have also a second-year player who had double-digit sacks. There are some guys who never experienced that in their entire NFL career.
Correct. I'm just saying, if you're going to compare these 2 guys, let's go apples to apples here.
I like oranges.
Fine. You can compare oranges to oranges. I don't care, Drew. Whatever you want to
I'm in Florida, damn it. I'm in Florida.
You can go to pair to pair if you want. If you want to compare
pair to pair,
your bananas to bananas, I don't care. Do you, man? It is 2024.
No one has pears. All right. So, like I said, we just had to kind of keep an eye. He's got to get better against the run. I'd like to see a little more consistency against some of the better teams, not beating the crap out of the bad teams. But instead, like I said, you can't complain about a second-year team, a second-year player getting 11.5 sacks. You can't.
No, not at all.
That's, like I said, there are plenty of players that never do that in the NFL. So, he's already proven he's a legit NFL talent. It's just a matter of how high the ceiling is for him. And I'm hoping that
this guy.
Yeah. And, you got to wonder, too, as well, that, what was the changes we made? The first change we made this offseason coaching-wise. We got to rid of Wink's boy Wilkins. What group did he coach? Outside linebackers. It makes you wonder. Did the Giants, was it not just a let's piss off Wink move? Did they have issues with the way Kayvon and these guys are being trained?
I think that has
like
a
I
lot
said,
to do with it.
It probably does. It probably does, especially because that team definitely left a little on the table to be desired last year. So, all right, let's move on here. We got more guys to go over here. It's half an hour. We've talked about two guys. We got to talk about. We got to talk about the guy who spends more time on the IR than he does the active roster. It feels like lately, and that's Azeez Ojulari, who also is still extremely young, 23 years old. He does turn 24 next year, but it's crazy. You guys you see these guys like 25 years old getting drafted this year, and here's a guy who's a couple more years before he hits that. 6'3", 240 pounds, second round pick out of Georgia in 21. Last year, 11 games, 7 starts, 16 tackles, 2.5 sacks, 3 tackles for loss, 7 QB hits, 1 fumble recovery, and a 51.8 PFF grade. Definitely a down year for Azeez. Definitely the worst of his 3 years he's now had in the league.
Which is not saying too much.
No, I think that's yeah. I think the other years I can't complain about the production of the 2 years. I can complain about the availability, especially year 2.
Yes,
but the production has not been bad. I did something to see something here. So if you look at the last 2 years, he played 17-game season. So you're just about a full season between those 2 seasons. In those 2 seasons, 18 games, 40 tackles, 8 sacks, 6 tackles for loss, 14 QB hits. That's not bad. Again, it's not top tier, but it's not bad for a guy who's going to be third on your depth chart at the position. That's not too bad at all.
And who has also probably not been 100% healthy because he's been battling injury on and off those 2 years.
And some of those 18 games, he probably didn't play, but more than a half or so in some of those in that kind of situation because of those injuries.
Yeah. Correct.
So again, the production has not been bad. I mean, like go back to 22 there over the prior season, he has 5.5 sacks in just 7 games. But it felt like what would happen is Azeez Ojulari would get a sack and an injury. It's like the two went hand to hand. You get a sack, you get an injury. You get a sack, you get an injury. Like that's the way it was. Like I felt like we kept having Azeez come back, get a sack, then get re-injured. So
you're not wrong.
And that's the issue people have had. And I feel like fans are already calling him a bust, basically. Because he's a second-round pick. I mean, let's be honest. Second-round picks come with expectations. There's the day 2 pick. You have expectations at that point. He's supposed to be the second best guy that you added to the draft that year. So, assuming you had just 1 first-round pick. But
assuming.
That's what I'm saying. You never know. We had 3 one year. We had 2 another year. I mean, but it's the expectations. We talked about this a little last year. I'm kind of wondering if they're really fair. I mean, the guy dropped to the very end of the second round, first off. And the guy dropped because there was injury concerns that came up in his medical portfolio there. And yet here we are blaming the guy for having medical issues.
That's fair.
It's like, could you imagine if you were interested? Okay, we're going to go back to the early young days of dating and somebody says, oh, good for you. She's a cheater. And you're like, okay, well, I'll try it out. Oh my God, she cheated. I can't believe it. You were forewarned.
What? Yeah.
I know it's kind of a crazy analogy, but I'm saying it's the same thing. You knew he had injury issues. You knew there was medical red flags. So how y'all going to get pissed off at a guy for getting injured that had medical red flags going into this? I don't get that. I don't get that. This guy was considered a first half of the first round talent wise, one of the best edge rushers in this draft. And he almost dropped to the 3rd round. We were like, with one of the last picks in the second round. I think we got him, if I remember right.
Something like
and
that.
Nobody can believe we traded down in the second round and still got him. So I just don't get why people get flipping like as if the man's not trying to be healthy. You think he wants to not be healthy? You think he's like, you know what? I'm gonna sit on the sidelines with a cast on eating bonbons.
I mean, that doesn't sound so bad.
They make bonbons still. I don't know. I'm just saying, like, I feel like there's a hate that goes towards him because of the injuries, and I think part of that is he's kind of a victim of his own success he's had on the field. I think part of it is people see what he's done when he is healthy, and they want more.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some of that. I mean,
Like,
I
you didn't
think
hear this with Shane Lemieux. Like, people are like, "Oh my God, Shane Lemieux! What the hell? The guy can't stay healthy." We just kind of forgot he was on the roster.
there's a, I feel like there's a lot more hate at first that he was a bust. This is like there's potential. Like this is the guy that you
Yeah.
work with in a project at work or at school or whatever you guys are doing out there, and you're like, this dude's smart. This dude's great. He's just lazy. You're gonna have to do all his work, but he'll tell you what to do, but you're gonna have to do all his work. And it's like, oh man, this is fantastic. God, I gotta do
This
5
venting
papers.
session is brought to you by Indeed.com.
Yeah. Well, indeed.
Indeed, if you're actually interested, 2giantgoofballs@mail.com. But yeah, I mean, I feel like that's the situation with him. And I wonder if keeping him now as a third edge guy is going to keep him healthy. And I'm intrigued to see what happens with him this season because of that. I think, again, you've seen this guy show pass rushing abilities. Kind of like Kayvon Thibodeaux. He's not the best against the run necessarily, but he's not horrible. He's definitely not a strong point, though. But he's shown the ability to get to the quarterback. And I wonder if they're going to start using him on the field along with Burns, Thibodeaux, and Sexy Dexy. Because that'd be quite a little quartet there.
Right? Ooh, quartet.
If he's healthy, people I think forget sometimes how good. Yeah, exactly. Like they should have strings. One's a violin, one's a cello.
Yes.
Dexter Lawrence is definitely the cellist. Dexter Lawrence is definitely the cellist.
100%.
But it's like, people. I think some people they almost forget like the production he can put up when he's healthy. Like this is the guy that if you can get him healthy like that and put him, and don't get me wrong, he's not going to be Tuck. He's not going to be Osi Umenyiora. He's not going to be JPP. Kiwanuka though.
Yeah.
And there's a role for guys like that, and you got to use them right. And this is a contract year for him, so he's got a little bit of gonna have a little pep in his step this season as well to prove he's worth that second contract, whether it's us or somebody else at that point there. Let's be honest, we're already paying him a lot of money to Burns. We're paying a decent amount of money to Kayvon as a top 5 pick. He probably, if he has a good year, will go elsewhere. But I have no problem with that. That's a good problem to have. How are we going to sign this guy at a great year? It's a great problem to have.
I was about to say, you can't sign this guy that you've been wanting to be.
Problem the Giants don't have is usually like, where are we going to fill these holes?
Well, if you really want to
know. Yeah. Yeah. So like I said, I'm intrigued to see what Aziz is going to do. I think it's going to be a decent season for him. And if he can stay healthy, I still think he could be a starter in this league if he's healthy. It just remains to see if he's going to ever be fully healthy and be able to sustain a whole year. But, we'll see if that's that year. We'll see if it is.
I don't know. We talked about what our freshman year at podcasting of him putting on too much beefcake.
Beefcake. Yeah, he did, and that was blamed for a lot of the injuries. Beefcake, but it's like, what was the excuse last year? And like I said, I think he's just going to be prone to injuries. I think he's got the medical red flags, and I think fans like to ignore it for a while because he looked good. The flags didn't go away; they were just at half-mast.
Whoa!
So, again, hopefully he can stay healthy. Hopefully we can get him up and running. be a nice backup at that point. A guy you bring into like a third down situation, obvious passing downs. He's got that ability. So let's see what we can get at him this year. All right, next up, we got a guy that we traded for last year that a lot of people still questioning the trade. But we're going to talk about him here. And that's Boogie Basham. Carlos Boogie Basham, to be exact. 26 years old, 6'3", 274 pounds. He's a big guy for an edge rusher. Second round pick out of Wake Forest back in 21. This past season with the Giants is only with the Giants so far. 13 games, 0 starts, 11 tackles, and a 55 PFF grade. Didn't do much for the Giants, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Now, he is the opposite of a Thibodeaux. This guy is a guy who's basically a run specialist kind of guy, like a wish version of Jihad Ward there that we've had the last couple of years. And I think that's why they're keeping on to him, is because let's say you want to rest Kayvon, or you want to rest Azeez Ojulari, the last two guys we talked about that aren't the best at stopping the run. Here's a guy you have on the bench that you can pop in for either one of those. And he's an upgraded run. So if it's like first down and, a fourth down and 1 or third down and 1, you pull him in at that point. And he's a much bigger guy than the average, edge rusher. Got a good 35 pounds on most of the guys we've talked about here so far.
Yeah, easy.
Yeah. He put the bash in Basham, that's for damn sure. I just don't know what to think of him, because there was a lot of good, decent hype coming out of college when he came out of Wake Forest. Hasn't lived up to the hype at all. I think this is probably his last shot with the Giants to prove he can do something. Because, again, assuming we can't re-sign Azeez Ojulari in the offseason, or we just choose not to, Basham, him, all gone. You might just revamp the entire bench of the edge room next year.
It's a possibility.
It's definitely a possibility. And, we talked about that as a position that somebody might look to go get a backup edge rusher at some point in the draft. We didn't do that. I thought it'd be interesting because of the fact that you knew Azeez was going to be probably with this, with the season here coming up. That's going to be year 4 for him, and he'll be a free agent somewhere else. I thought they might kind of pick his successor in this draft. But they had a lot of holes. And they didn't choose to fill that one. So Boogie Basham, at least currently, is edge number 4 in the draft.
In the draft now.
I meant at the draft. Crazy. Sorry, in the depth chart. In the depth chart.
We're a little crazy here.
Need some coffee. I worked a 14-hour shift today, people. But yeah, that's like I said. I don't have any high hopes for him. I don't have high hopes.
Yeah,
these are reversed.
I got high hopes on all these guys.
But I know. But I listen. I like the top 3 guys we have. I do. I like Brian Burns. I just think we overpaid for him.
I'll take that back. I didn't mean to say the top
Thibodeaux,
3 guys.
He's young
here.
And it still is a working project. I like you. What was that?
I meant below here, under Bash. Meant under Bash.
No, I mean, like I said, I'm just beyond the 3. I don't have a lot of high hopes for these guys. I really don't. I think we're still a little thin at the position. It's just you can't fix every position in one offseason. So hopefully the guys we have are going to stay healthy. It's just I have questions on that because we have, Azeez, who's had trouble, and Kayvon's had his issues as well, both in his first year in the NFL back in 22 and in college. So we'll have to see what happens. Next up, we have a guy that intrigues me, a guy that I'm bewildered by, because I see things about him sometimes, and I'm like, he could be something. And I see things other times,
He
and I'm
could
like,
have been
yeah,
a
no, he can't.
contender.
Could have been a contender.
Yeah.
Timon, what does the fox say?
Ooh, ooh,
And
ooh, ooh.
20 that's a good karaoke song, by the way. 26 years old, 6'3", 260 pounds. Timon Fox comes out undrafted out of North Carolina back in 22. I don't know about the Giants and North Carolina players. I feel like they're just trying to like repeat the LT success. Is that what's going on? You're like, we had the best player ever to come out of that school. We just keep on doing it. We'll get him.
Maybe.
We'll get the next LT. Last year, one game, no starts, one tackle, and a 57.5 PFF grade. I didn't feel like that was a safe like stat line to give to like show what he can do. So I did go to the 22 stats as well for this guy. He just kind of rode the bench a little bit there and rode the practice squad. But in 22, 16 games, 1 start, 24 tackles, a sack, 3 tackles for loss, and 1 QB hit. The weird thing about Timon Fox, I feel like, is you almost forget about him. He kind of just is a background player. And then all of a sudden, he makes this weird play out of nowhere. And you're like, oh my God, I can't believe he just did this. Timon Fox, of all people. Because you don't have a high expectation of a guy who's an undrafted player. You don't, let's be honest.
And then us as Giants fans, we love our undrafted players.
Listen, Cruz, just saying.
I hear you.
We typically do well with them.
We do. But we also have a lot of high hopes for another undrafted free agent who loves his passe vajoux.
Well, that's a whole different, that's a whole different thing. People just love the story of him. I feel like Timon Fox, though, he does have his fan base within the Giants, nation there. I feel like he is that guy who, he'll be that guy that, again, you just every so often he just makes a play and you're like, okay, this guy's got potential. Like, where's this been? And then you look at the rest of the game and you're like, well, that's the only thing he did all game. Like, he's got that knack for being at the right place at the right time. And then disappearing.
Yeah. He's like the foxtrot, right?
It's a weird thing, Lord. Yeah. Yeah, it's a weird thing there. So I don't know what to think of Timon Fox, though. I still hope he develops into somebody that you can have as a decent backup in this league here. But I'll tell you this, if he keeps up that way, where only he shows up every so often and he kind of disappears again, eventually he's going to disappear from the NFL in general.
It's typically how that works.
Yeah, people tolerate that when you're young. He's already 26 years old. And I know 26 years old is young to a lot of us. Let's be very frank. If I was teenage daddy, he could be my son.
Who is he adapting with? What does he do? He works 14 hours a day.
Guy. I was in high school when he was born. That's why he's in the NFL, trying to get me to retire now. It's like
he's going to pay for your retirement.
I look at what he's doing, and like I said, it's good enough to intrigue not just myself but NFL teams. But when you're turn 28, 29, 30, I'm less intrigued. So hopefully for his sake, he has a decent year. Balls out a little bit there. I'm not saying like going crazy where you use a starter and all this kind of stuff. Like, you got to set the bar a little lower like that. But if he can give you like 20 tackles and like 4 sacks, and go, okay, this is a guy who's, got some abilities. He's shown a little bit there in some small amount of time there. That's a guy that you can be okay with keeping for a few years. So we'll see what happens there. But I know he's definitely got his fans within the organization too. They didn't keep him around to sit him on the practice squad last year because they just needed someone to sit there. He's got some fans. Yeah.
Touche.
Hopefully their thoughts are validated. All right, guys, we got one more player to talk about here. And the song says, let's give him something to talk about. There's not really much to talk about. This is
Ooh.
like the let's not give them something to talk about here, basically. Benton Whitley, 25 years old, 6'3", 260 pounds, undrafted from Princeton University, most prestigious New Jersey college there is, which is not saying much. Look at that Hugh Rutgers and Trenton State College or College New Jersey, whatever the hell you call you now.
Mom's University.
You and Seton Hall. But yeah,
Ryder.
undrafted out of Princeton in 22. Oh, Ryder, I forgot about Ryder. Stockton.
Anyway.
Last year he played a combination with the Giants and the Vikings. In that total for both teams, 4 games, no tackles, 1 pass deflected, and 1 fumble recovery. Not a lot in that time frame. Now, keep in mind, he was used sparingly, though. It's not like he was used a lot. But he's another guy who's not exactly very young. He was 25 years old now. He spent 2 years in this league, which mostly in practice squads and stuff like that. But I feel like at 25 years old, like we talked about Timon Fox. Like I'm intrigued by him because he showed me some glimpses of being a potential depth piece, not a star, but a depth piece potentially. Benton Whitley is 25 years old, and I'm not intrigued at all. I'm really not.
Yeah.
Like I'm more intrigued than who might get cut, and we can add to the roster. Is that bad?
I mean, it sounds
bad.
terrible, but it's not. It's not bad. It's not. It just sounds terrible because you look at this guy, you're like, oh, Princeton University. He's a Jersey boy. Like, oh,
Jersey.
Even though there's a lot of Eagle fans out there, so yeah,
there is, and that neck of the woods is mostly Eagles fans. That's for sure.
Yeah, especially
more people
these
listening to the cherry blossoms. Everyone loves a good cherry blossom. Now, for the record, though, he is from Springfield, Massachusetts, so he's not actually a Jersey boy. He went to school in Jersey.
I'm just saying. I was just out of Princeton yesterday.
I know. Oh, nice. You get some education while you're there?
All the education. Or I went there for work. Either way. All the education.
Got a diploma now. So like I said, I'm just not sure what to think as far as expectation-wise for Benton Whitley. I feel like this is a guy who's on the cusp of basically being out of the league at this point. That's where he's at. Hate to say it that way. I know man wants to make a living, but that's where we're at. So let's talk about the potential, because we're talking about the depth issues now. Let's talk about, should we pick up a free agent here for that position? You know, it's one of the things we like to look at with these position group here. Like, is there a need? And I don't mean a need for speed, but a need for another edge player. And I feel like it's a two-parter on the answer. Do we need some backups and some more depth? Hells yeah. Is there really anybody out there you might be intrigued by? Probably not.
Yeah.
Probably not. It's mostly older players. Like if you want to pick up like Yannick Ngakoue, who was a big name a couple years ago, but seems to change names like underwear, or change teams like underwear, and has been on like a different team every 3 months. It feels like, sure. You want to go Carl Lawson, who was again the big name a couple years ago. Jerry Hughes, ex-Bill, ex-Texan, obviously. Joe Shane and Dave will probably have a somewhat of a relationship with the guy, at least know who he is. Marcus Golden, you want to bring him back again? He loves the Giants. I could not be more facetious saying that. Shaq Lawson. I mean, like there's some people out there. Don't get me wrong. It's not that there's no one out there, but there's no one out there that you're like, you know what? This is a guy that I could have out there. He'd be cheap. He's young. He could be with the team for a while. Blah blah blah. You got a bunch of older has-beens, basically. That's what it is.
Pretty much.
It's a little mean to say it that way, but it's the truth. So I'm not looking to add anybody at this point to the edge room if I'm Joe Shane of the Giants. I would probably go, you know what, let's take a look at who gets cut, because there's always a couple names out there that get cut when the you get to cut down to the 53-man roster there. And some of those are some good names. Some of those are guys that are younger, that they just maybe, have some decent depth at that position already and don't have a spot for them, and you can steal somebody. That's probably the best bet for that position at this point there. So just try to steal somebody. Steal away. When the time comes, when somebody tries to sneak someone onto the onto that practice squad there, say nope, we got a spot for you right over here.
Yeah.
Come on,
right
come on down. Remember to spay and neuter
your next contestant on the third string.
Third and fourth string.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's where we're at. So, I mean, unless one of the big names gets an injury, like if Burns or Thibodeaux gets injured, or Aziz sneezes or coughs, or he stands up or wakes up and has problems, because it seems like it doesn't take much to injure him,
Yeah, brushing his teeth.
Yeah, maybe getting a glass of water.
Grab the milk jug out of the door of the refrigerator.
Wiping the seats when he sprinkles as he tinkles. Whatever.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, maybe then you look to add a guy like that, because you can add a guy, Yannick Ngakoue or something like that, becomes cheap for the year. Maybe you add him for a year like that to kind of be like that. But yeah, I think that's where we're at there. So unless injuries, just try to get somebody that drops off a squad at that point and call it a day. And of course, we always got to talk about, as we always do here with every position we talk about, are the Giants better in the edge room in 2024 than they were in 2023? And I would love to hear if anybody thinks otherwise in this. But I can't see anybody saying that the 23 group is better than 24 group. Because basically what we did is we replaced Jihad Ward and got Brian Burns. Basically what we did. And Hadi was he's a fun player to have the 2 years we had him. He's obviously a pretty popular guy in the Giants locker room there. But let's be honest, he was a run stopper that really didn't provide a ton against the pass. Kind of shocked us a little bit with showing a little bit of pass rush ability there in 22 there. But then kind of reverted back to what he was for most of his career in 23. It was like the quarterbacks have half an hour to pass when he sees the guy trying to chase him down.
Pretty much.
Just not what he does. He's a locker room guy. He's a run stopper. So Brian Burns is 10 times the player he is. No knock on Hadi there. Like I said, I'm not trying to be that guy as he's leaving here. And I'm sure probably wasn't very happy with the Giants considering his buddy relationship he has with Wink there. But this is a guy that had a role. He was a role player. And you replace a role player with a star. Anytime you can do that, you're
definitely improving the team big time.
The coaching. Yeah. The coaching should also be better. Again, we talked about this before. We talked about Kayvon and all. The first thing the Giants did when the season ended was fire the outside linebackers coach, the guy who coaches the edge room. They don't call it the edge coach. They call it the outside linebacker coach. So it's like, yeah, you think the Giants might have been upset with the coaching? The Giants might have been a little ticked off at the way the defensive edge room there was, growing talent-wise. Some of the things they were doing. I mean, obviously they had issues. I can't believe for a second the Giants are like, let's just piss off Wink. Let's just fire Drew Wilkins for the hell of it. That'll really piss him off. Like, we all knew it was coming, and obviously part of the issue with him was his relationship. Part of the issue was his relationship with Wink. Let's be honest there. He was Wink's guy. He was like Wink's assistant, basically. But if they really wanted to keep Wink like they said initially, then they wouldn't have, gone ahead and said, that's the best thing to do. Let's piss him off. Let's fire his best friend. That'd be great. He'll love it. He'll
definitely stay. He's loyal.
So, like I said, definitely definitely an upgrade this season here. Like I said, the depth's still an issue, but the depth was an issue last year. Let's be very frank on that. The depth was an issue last year.
It was an issue in a lot of spots last year.
Yeah. Especially after the 17,000 people that got injured. But yeah, like I said, so I'm liking where we're at compared to last year. I just would still like to see it, but I think as a guy with the at the end of the all right, we got one more thing to talk about with you guys, but before we do that, we're having the internet
It's
issue.
my favorite time.
So we got to pay the bills. We got to pay the bills. We're going to try.
Enjoying the show? Looking for more goofball action? Consider a membership at buymeacoffee.com/2giantgoofballs. Memberships start at just $5 and give you additional goofball access. One-time support payments also available starting at just $3. Buymeacoffee.com/2giantgoofballs.
Drew, you still there? All right. Drew left. Womp womp. All right, let's get through some of these comments as well. We don't got too many. Early on, we had John Anderson Jr. What's up, John? You probably went to bed. But quarter till, you decided to jump on way before we even started. We started 15 minutes late, so you got here way late. So, should they sign them? More like, could or will they sign him? It's a good question. I don't have any idea who you're talking about. Boom. Good night, John boy.
Okay, here we go. Now I'm back. I was like, hold on. So John's talking about the last segment we haven't talked about yet. So,
oh,
yeah, that's what he's
sneaky. I guess we'll bring him back there.
He put that up before we even started here. Let's see.
Enjoying the show? Looking for more goofball action? Consider a membership at buymeacoffee.com/2giantgoofballs. Memberships start at just $5 and give you additional goofball access. One-time support payments also available starting at just $3. Buymeacoffee.com/2giantgoofballs.
All right.
Now, I will tell you, too, we have a new member to the Two Giant Goofball Buy Me a Coffee Club there, but we're going to wait until next episode there because we're having the internet issues today, and the man deserves recognition on a show where you don't have issues that we're having here tonight. So we will go ahead and address that later on here, of course, there. So that'll be on tomorrow when we do our next episode here. We'll be talking about the linebackers. So let's get into the last section here. So came across an interesting little bit of news here that I thought, this was the things that make you go, Things that make you go, And the Ravens cut someone today. They cut defensive lineman Bravvion Roy. And it made me wonder if the Giants should look to pick him up. This is like the perfect type of guy for the Giants to pick up because this is an obvious spot where the Giants need competition. We talked about the defensive line show. We have so many young guys that we're counting on to do something. And it's a little ridiculous to just assume they're going to do something. Talk about guys who, let's try DJ Davidson. Let's try these guys. See what happens. It's like you can't count on guys like Ryder Anderson and people like that to become a starter or a quality depth piece when they haven't shown you they can do that yet. That's not to say they won't get it there. But in the meantime, if you could bring in some competition for them, not the worst thing in the world. So Roy is 6'1", 330 pounds, 20 out of Baylor by the Panthers. where he started playing for his college coach, Matt Rule. That was in the days. 45 games overall and 15 starts. He did not play at all in the NFL last season. He spent last year actually on the Ravens practice squad. And the Ravens, like I said, are the ones who cut him there. They kept him on all year long. I know some people might say, okay, hold on. A practice squad guy, so you want to sign? A practice squad guy, one of the best defenses in the entire league last year.
Yeah.
There's a little difference between signing a guy off the Panthers practice squad and signing a guy that was on the Ravens practice squad. Not to keep being mean to the Panthers, but I mean that's what it is.
Take one of the down.
But back in 22, which is his third year with the Ravens, with the Panthers, his last year with them. 13 games, 4 starts, 17 tackles, 1 QB hit, 1 interception, weirdly enough, and 3 passes deflected there. Again, I think this is just a guy the Giants should take a look at bringing in to get another depth piece there, get another guy to fight for those roles that they have there. Because, again, besides Sexy Dexy, which obviously I know is a big name and he's a stud, obviously, and Nacho, who do we really have in the defensive line you trust? Yeah.
That depth
It's not positive.
It's not like those belt lines.
It's not
a lot of girth.
It's not positive. So, like I said, just a guy. Like I said, I'm not expecting this guy to turn to a great player. I'm not expecting to be a crazy Pro Bowl starter and the next big contract in the NFL. But he's a guy who's got a little experience. He's still youngish. You take a shot and you see what you got. And if it doesn't work out, you're probably going to sign him cheap because he was on a practice squad all last year. It's not like he had to pay him a ton of money. It'll probably be the minimum contract. He'll be happy. So,
probably
works with our cap situation. Yeah. So
we're shopping a team.
We're bargain shoppers here. So, like I said, just thought it was an interesting thing to put out there at that. Haven't heard really anybody talking about it since it happened there, but it'd be an interesting guy to look at. So, alrighty. Now I lost you during the middle of the comments. You were starting to go over there. Did you finish the comments?
I just went through. Nope, not at all. So with John and Deb.
Okay.
Going for them. All right, going back up there. Yep.
Chris says, "Hey guys, what's good? OTA risers, fallers." Honestly, Chris, we're probably the worst people. Yeah, we're probably the worst people to talk about OTA risers and followers because we think everything coming out of Giants camp is all BS.
Yeah, it is more of a BS story than
don't feed into the hype of risers and followers at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you look at what the Giants say, everybody's a riser and no one's a faller.
Yeah.
That's just, that's what it is. So again, I'll hold, in when we actually get on the field in the preseason, that's when I'll have some opinions on some guys there, depending on what they even do. Because we don't know. They didn't really play the starters at all last year.
Yeah.
So here, Neymar says, guys, who thinks Nick should get to help Jalen Brunson? Guys, Giants, I think will keep Tommy DeVito. I think Tommy DeVito is a guy that they're going to try to go ahead and get. I really do, to stay on the team in some way, shape, or form. But I think it's probably going to be on the practice squad. I don't think there's going to be necessarily all that big a hype and everything for him to be otherwise. And I got to be honest with you, as far as the Knicks, man, I'm just not a basketball guy. I'm not.
No.
So I'll stay in my lane with football and give you guys that information. Now, if you want to talk old school basketball, I'm down in a heartbeat. If you want to talk about the Jordan era when I grew up watching it, like that's the era, and that's crazy. You talk about the Jordan era as if it's one player, but he was just that good back then. That's my era of basketball. I watched at that point. The Dream Team, the original Dream Team people at that point,
which was
the
pretty
90s.
much the Olympic team.
That's what I'm saying, but that was just an amazing team at that point. So, even though they left Isaiah Thomas off, he's a jerk. But he said that's really where I'm at as far as football, unfortunately, man. Sorry, as far as basketball, I should say. Chris says your opinions on this Tommy DeVito BS. What was that?
I said I was a wrestler, so that's how much I pay attention to basketball. I was so bad. My shot was way better in wrestling, which wasn't saying much.
There you go. Chris, though, let us know what you mean as far as this Tommy DeVito BS, because I'm curious what you're referring to exactly. He also says, I think Dante Miller should be RB3, Tracy RB2, and Singletary RB1, period. Honestly, I think it's going to go potentially that way, the way things are going. But I still think Turbo might go to number 2. I think Miller might squeak into that number 2 spot, but it's going to be up for grabs with him and Tracy. And Eric Gray will probably be on the practice squad or something. At this point, the way I'm down on Gray, and I can't hide it.
You're so gray and gray.
I'm gray and gray, exactly.
Yeah.
So, all right, guys, we're gonna see you guys again here tomorrow. Like I said, hopefully we can get my computer back up and run 100% here. I'm off tomorrow, so I can work and try to figure out the problem a little better. Ooh. So I apologize to you guys about that. That I hate when we have issues like that. We'll be back though again, like I said, talking about the linebacker position there for you. Chris, real quick, because Chris he said his take on being on the team. Tommy D, he says he needs his spot. He's going to be on the practice squad, or he'll be on the team. That's his spot. That's his spot. It is exactly his spot. His spot is that, and he's going at home, getting his mom to his laundry, and having some
and making chicken
parm. So, all right, guys. Again, we'll be back again tomorrow talking about the linebacker group there for you guys. Appreciate you guys listening, and always again apologize about the late start, the technical issues we're having here during this. Appreciate you guys' patience with that. I know it's a pain in the butt. We will see you guys again tomorrow, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tomorrow. As always, we are live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter/X, Twitch, and of course Rob's favorite, my LinkedIn profile.
Drew's LinkedIn page.
And as always, we're available the next day on every audio podcast, pretty much platform known to man here. Amazon, Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, Pandora, all the fun ones here. So, appreciate you guys listening, and as always, Giant fan. The outro, and hopefully this thing doesn't freeze up on us. Go G-Man! Go G-Man!
Thanks for listening to Two Giant Goofballs, a New York Giants podcast. We appreciate your support.
Thanks so much.